These breakfast seminars. This is actually our 6th seminar in this series, and today we have the pleasure of presenting new demands and packaging processes, which is the topic for today. And we have two prominent guests here today. One guest called Malin Göransson, who will be starting off with a presentation called Extended Producer Responsibility, What is New? And she should know, as she's an advisor from the Swedish Environmental Protection Agency, and this is what she's working with, producer responsibility in general, and as of some time back, very much focused on packaging. We're looking forward to that presentation, and when she's finished, we will go directly to Ann Lorentzon's presentation. She's a project manager at RISE, and she will talk about Miljöpack, which is a supportive trade and industry group for packaging, and she will tell you more about that. And then you will all be able to pose questions via the chat. So please do that all along, and we will pick up all the questions that we have time for after the two presenters are done. And at the end of this seminar, we usually have a little gathering gathering your questions in a Mentimeter. So please have your smartphones ready, and we'll take that at the end. By that, Malin, please start your presentation. We are looking forward to hear what you have to say on the producer responsibility.
Thank you. So I'll share my presentation. Okay, so I work at the Swedish Environmental Protection Agency, Swedish EPA, and we're about 500 colleagues, and we have our offices in Stockholm and in Östersund. So I'm sitting in Östersund right now. So I'm going to tell you a little bit what is new with the producer responsibility for packaging, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about our work with plastic, because we have a special work right now doing a lot of things in the plastic area. So the Swedish EPA, we're an agency working for our government, and we also work with EU and internationally. We develop environmental policy, and we implement this policy and ensure compliance according to this environmental policy. Okay, so how do I switch the... So what does producer responsibility really mean? And you all heard about circular economy, I think, and we think producer responsibility is kind of the same thing. You have a responsibility for all the products that you put on the market until the waste has been taken care of. And you also heard you call it the cradle to grave, or circular economy, or producer responsibility. We think it's kind of the similar things we all have. And at the Swedish EPA, we work with the guidance for all of our producer responsibilities, and we also have enforcement. So we see that all producers take their responsibility according to the legislation that we have in Sweden. We have a lot of different producer responsibilities in Sweden, so I'm just gonna show you this list of all the things that we work with, me and my colleagues. But packaging and newsprint is the one that I'm gonna focus on today. So our Swedish producer responsibility for packaging is it's a Swedish ordinance, but it's based on a waste directive, packaging and packaging waste directive that is decided by the EU. And it's kind of important to know that this directive is the base of our Swedish responsibility, because that means that all EU countries has similar rules, or at least they all have rules for packaging. So if you comply with the Swedish ordinance, you also need to look into the different countries if it's the same or if they have different legislation as Sweden. So in Sweden, we had a new legislation that was decided in 2018, and we did this timeline to kind of put up the process of implementing this new legislation. So it started with the preparatory consultation, and then this spring we had 2 applications that for collection from households. So to collect packaging waste from households, you need a permit from us. And to collect from other than households, you only need to registrate to us. And this is from 1st of January next year. So we had 2 applications for this permit to collect from households, but we recently declined both of the permits because we saw that they didn't really fulfill the legislation's high demands, and we're now working on writing to our government that they need to review parts of the legislation so that we can try these applications again. So this makes it a little bit shaky, but still I'm going to present the legislation as it is right now without these changes. So from 1st of January next year, all producers need to register to us, and they need to pay a control fee to us for our enforcement that we're doing within the producer responsibility. 60% of all households should have curbside collection, and 2025 everyone where possible should have this curbside collection. I'm going to go in more about these different areas later on in my presentation. So we have a lot of guidance on our webpage, both in Swedish and a summary in English. So you can find it on these links. So the purpose of this new packaging legislation is to reduce the amount of packaging waste, limit the harm to the environment from materials and substances found in the packaging, and require producers to provide or join a collection scheme that takes this responsibility for the waste. It's also to ensure that packaging waste is managed according to the regulations. And we also have targets for material recycling that we should achieve according to this responsibility. And who is a producer? This is a new definition with the new legislation, and with this new definition there is less producers per packaging, and it could be a filler or anyone that uses a package for the purpose of protecting, presenting, or facilitating the handling of a product. It could be anyone that places a packaged item on the Swedish market, anyone that manufactures a packaging in Sweden, or bring in a packaged item or packaging into the Swedish market. So we can see that there could possibly be 2 producers per packaging. It could be one that manufactures a packaging, or and another one that is filling the package. But we're trying to have as few producers per packaging as we could. So as a producer, everyone has a responsibility to provide or join a collection scheme. You also have to register and report the information to us, Swedish EPA. And you have a responsibility to design packaging according to the regulation. So I will go into all these 3 responsibilities. So as for design and labeling, this also is connected to the EU directives. And Anne, that is having the next presentation, is going to tell you a little bit more about this. But overall, packaging should be designed so it has volume and weight that is limited to the minimum required. It could be reused and recycled, and it's designed so that emissions of harmful substances are minimized. EU has developed standards that are translated to Swedish as well, and you can find them on the SIS, that is the Swedish standardization. I don't know what they call them in English, SIS. And there is also a voluntary labeling that is voluntary in Swedish legislation. So that is the triangle with a symbol. But this could be something that you have to do in other countries. So it could be good to know this. So with the responsibility to register and report to the Swedish EPA, this is from 1st of January 2021. And you should register and describe how you fulfill the requirement regarding collection. So this will be done on a website. So we're developing this website right now, and there will be more guidance on our webpage when it's done. Hopefully in the fall there will be more information about this registration form. And also producers that uses a packaging, bring a packaged item, or manufacturers or bring in a service packaging shall annually by 31st of March report the packaging that they have provided or placed on the Swedish market during the previous calendar year. And this is done every year. So you need to remember this. The registration is only done once, but this reporting you have to do every year. The collection scheme should also report to us no later than 31st of March. And they should report which producers that are connected to their scheme, the amount of packaging waste that has been collected, and how they have treated the waste. And the ones that are not collecting from household but from professional businesses should also report and register to us. It's similar information even for them. So from 1st of January, all producers need to pay an enforcement fee to us at the Swedish EPA, and this fee is 500 Swedish crowns per year. The collection scheme that has a permit also needs to pay this enforcement fee, but it's a lot higher since they have more responsibility. And if you're late with this reporting that I just told you about, you could get a fee for 10,000 Swedish crowns. Okay, I see that I didn't translate this headline, but this is changes that is coming within the packaging and packaging waste directive that I told you, the EU legislation. So the EU has set up minimum requirements for producer responsibility. That means that all producer responsibilities needs to at least reach these minimum requirements. They also changed the directive to focus on the increased reuse and material recycling. They changed the measurement point for the reporting, so that it should show what is actually material recycled. And they're also working right now on reviewing the essential requirements, and the essential requirements is the requirements that is setting up how you should design your packaging. So this is this last point with the review of essential requirements is parts of the EU Green Deal work, and they're now having a consultant looking into how to change these essential requirements, and they said that they're going to review the packaging directive next year, 2021. So we're following this work, and we'll see what changes they will decide. So the targets that I told you about that we have in our legislation, this is the target. The red line is the targets for 2020, and this is our latest statistics on how we are according to the targets right now. And I didn't have this graph in English, but I think it's kind of the same. It's glass, plastic packaging, but not the plastic packaging that is included in our deposit return scheme. This is the ones that is in the deposit return scheme: paper, metal packaging, and this is the deposit return scheme metal cans, wood packaging, and this is the total packaging waste. So this is for material recycling. But as I said, they're changing the measuring point. So that means that this is with the old measuring point, and with the new one, it could be changes. And every year we publish a report on how we reach the targets, and you can find it on our webpage. So this link is to the recent report. And as I said, the EU has decided on new targets. So this is the new targets from until 2029 and after 2030. And it's the same, except that metal packaging has been divided with iron and aluminum within the deposit return scheme and without the deposit return scheme. And this is plastic within the deposit return scheme and without the deposit return scheme. So EU has also decided on a single-use plastic directive. This is maybe not news for everyone, but we're trying to implement this in Swedish law now, and our government has decided on investigation, and Swedish EPA is supporting this investigation in certain questions. So this is heads up, and it's coming, and we see that some of the products in this single-use plastic directive is packaging, and that's why I'm informing you about it right now, because, for example, cups, it's a packaging and it will affect our packaging legislation. So our plastic work that we do on the Swedish EPA, that we think it's really important to have a sustainable use of plastic. And we think that plastic used properly is a huge benefit to the society, but we need to see how we can do that. So this is just some slides about our work with plastic, and we see that plastic should not be used unnecessarily, and we should see what we make plastic from which materials we use in plastic, so that we can have the materials that use low environmental impact. And that it's really important that plastic is to be recycled and is free from hazardous substances and doesn't end up in the nature and harm humans or animals or the nature. So this, yeah, we need to go from disposable to multi-use. And packaging waste has been pointed out as a really big stream of this plastic. So that's why I'm bringing this up right now as well. And as I said, we need to choose the right raw material. Either bio-based or recycled material we see is better than fossil oil-based plastic. And we should use it in a resource efficient way, designed for reuse or material recycled. So this is for all producers designing packaging to think of when designing how you should use this packaging. And this should be free from hazardous substances. We're trying to phase out some hazardous substances, and it's important that it's not going back in the loop when material recycled. So when designing, you should also think about this. And as the single-use plastic directive is pointed out, that the littering is one big part of plastic waste, and that's why they decided about the single-use plastic directive. And we see that we need to do more to reduce this littering of all plastic. And I wanted to show you this report that we published that is a mapping of all plastic flows in Sweden. And it also has some recommendations on how you should work with plastic in your organization. And you can find it on our web, and it's in English and in Swedish. And here is my contact information if you have questions. And I have a colleague, Emma, that is also answering questions if you have some more. Okay.
Thank you very much, Malin. This is interesting, I think, and it's quite high demands on the producers, I suppose. And we've been discussing this, and the next speaker, Ann Göransson, will actually talk a little bit about the kind of support that we may provide as a research institute. And Ann has been working as a project leader for our institute for RISE and previously other versions of our institute. And she's been working there for 25 years with packaging as the main focus for all these years, right? And we are now going to listen to your presentation. So please take over, and also please unmute yourself so we can hear what you say. You are unmuted. Okay, great. I didn't see that. Okay, so
you can see my
go
screen.
ahead. Yeah.
Oh, everything is working. That's great. Thank you for this opportunity to talk. In the introduction, I will I'm instead of Cathrine Löfgren, who is in charge of Miljöpack, but I have been working with Miljöpack for a long time, and I hope I could do a decent presentation of Miljöpack anyway. And of course, if you have questions or so, you will have Cathrine's mail address in the end. So, well, I try to, and I go on to this presentation. I will start with a short, well, as I said, it was, well, do I have to do that like this? This is stupid. Well, anyway, I'll start with a short recap recap of the Packaging and Packaging Waste Directive, as Malin just talked about. In the directive, you have two different requirements area. You have the essential requirements, saying you should limit your weight and volume, and you should do the packaging recoverable in some way, and you should limit hazardous substances. And there are also another requirement area about recycling targets, as also Malin mentioned. And for that, will ending up in the producer responsibility. In both these requirements area, you have to take care of. So if you come down to Sweden, you have this two kind of area. You have the Swedish ordinance. Now this is Swedish because Swedish ordinances is just in Swedish. And we have these two organizations. We have the well-known organization FTE or TMR, who have dealing with the collection, recyclability, and things like that of the use package. But actually, the design requirements of the composition of the packaging, that's the area that Miljöpack working with. So what is the design area? It's, as Malin said, is called the essential requirements. And the first one is the packaging should be minimized to the in volume and weight to secure the safety and health for the consumer. So it said you are supposed to minimize your packaging depending on the functions, because of course if packaging is a function. You don't buy a packaging for itself. You're buying the packaging for it's for the product, and the packaging is just a service to get the product from producing to consuming point, and that functions have to be minimized. I'm coming back to that later because it says in the standard how you can work with that. The second essential requirement is reuse recovery, including energy recovery, material recycling, or composting. So every packaging put on the EU market have to be recoverable in one of these three ways. Often you can be used in different ways. And of course, if we are aiming for a circle society, we don't want to have noxious or hazardous substances in this flow of material in this circle. So of course we want to minimize or eliminate that kind of substances. So that was a short beginning of the requirements behind Miljöpack. So what were you doing? Miljöpack is actually over 20 years. It started in the middle of 90s. We got the first Swedish ordinance about producer responsibility in 94 here in Sweden. And when that came, the industry took an initiative to start Miljöpack based on another sister organization called Norpack, who are dealing with the legislation of food contact material. And when the environmental requirements come, the industry was thinking that was a good way to work with this kind of questions. Miljöpack is also a member of European, which are a European lobby organization for packaging and environment, material neutral, the same as Miljöpack is. We work with all kinds of materials. And that's a good way to monitoring what's happening down in Europe, and also be able to influence what happened down there. Now when we are part of RISE, we have so many expertise areas we can use in Miljöpack. We have, of course, the testing equipment out in our laboratory in Kista, but we have all this material research, we have user and usability and consumer knowledge, and all kind of knowledge we can use for design the best kind of packaging. Over the years, over 40 companies have been participate in the Miljöpack. And a lot of them are quite huge companies with global markets and global understanding how to work with this design requirements to adapt for the EU market. We work with several areas in Miljöpack. We work with a guide based on the standards Malin talked about, and I'll come back to that. The guide is actually how to evaluate your packaging so you're able to show you're fulfilling the essential requirements. As I said, we're monitoring and influence the development of legislation, both in Sweden. We have this kind of collaboration with the Swedish EPA, and also through European on EU level. Network, of course, we are a lot of companies in the organization, and we work with the authorities and global actors. And we will also work with education and information, for example, like this. But we also give out a newsletter 4 times every year. So how to get the compliance with the requirements? As I said, you have the essential requirements in the packaging waste directive, and we have these standards which are actually mandated. So it's saying if you're working with this kind of standard, with these 6 standards, because they are mandated, is actually assume that you are fulfilling the requirement. If you could say you are evaluated your packaging through these standards. But 6 standards, there's a lot of standards, a lot of text to read. So in Miljöpack, we're doing this kind of guide based on the standards, but we try to collect an experience about how to work with this kind of evaluation, and compile that to some guide, easy understanding and suitable guidance. Back to the standards, as I said, there are 6 of them. It started with a framework or umbrella standard, just actually saying how to work with these 6 standards. And maybe the second standard is the most important, but because the 2 first is for all kind of packaging, the other 4 is for different kind of packaging. But this prevention standard is the one who say how could you say you're fulfilling the demand of not having too much weight or have too big packaging. And you're using that, you actually doing that because, not because, but through decide what kind of critical area, what kind of critical function you have to not be able to minimize your packaging anymore. And the function is mentioned, you have 10 different functions in the standard, and it's product protection, logistics, consumer acceptance, safety, and so on. And you have to decide what kind of what is the function you can't minimize this package anymore. And that in that prevention standard is also about talking about the dangerous or hazardous substances, how you could minimize that. There is a standard about reuse. If you have a reuse package, how could you evaluate and say you're actually having that? You actually need a reuse system. You can't just say that the package is reusable. You have to have a system to actually reuse it. And the three last standards is about recovering. There is about material recovery, or material recycling, I used to say, or energy recovery or composting. And you have to fulfill at least one of this to put a packaging on the market. But as I said, Miljöpack's guide is based on this standard, but we try to make it in a more efficient way, so you don't have to read all the 6 standards. And also, if you see the standards, they're actually dealing with different actors in the packaging value circle. So if you're coming down to producer responsibility, that it is a shared responsibility. You have to talk with each other, because if you talk about the hazardous or dangerous substances, it's what actually the content in the raw material. If you talk about design and the performance of the package, or actually choosing the package, you talk about the packaging production or filling actors. And of course, the user are responsible for, especially if you have a reuse system. And recycling have to take care of the packaging in the end of life. So this requirements is for all packaging placed on the market, and you have to work with them, and in end you will come to some kind of declaration of compliance. It's actually a blanket format in the standard, but you can of course make this summarize of the evaluation in different ways. So when coming back to all these 3 different aspects. For aspects, we have the guide, we have the member voice. As I said, we're working with trying to influence legislation, monitor and influence legislation. And we have a network, and we had education information. And but one major thing for Miljöpack is actually we're trying to promote that packaging have a role to fulfill in this circular and sustainable society we're aiming for. It's not just a burden or problem, it can also be a solution if we work with that on the right way. So therefore, that's a main goal for Miljöpack. What is happening and what's new requirements? As Malin already mentioned that also, but I put it in some kind of another way. We have this extended producer responsibility, which we already have here in Sweden also, and what we know will come is they will increase the recycling levels, so they will be higher in the future from no, please don't do that. 2025 and even more higher 2030. And as Malin also said, there will be new harmonized calculation methods, because today we have in different countries calculate the recycling levels in different ways. So now we will have a harmonized standardization method in all countries, so we can actually compare the recycling levels in different countries in a better way than we are doing now. But as Malin also said, instead of base this recycling level on what we're collecting of reused packaging, which most of the countries do today, we will instead change that to what actually going back into new products. And this is just a slide I have used in other project. This is just for plastic, but I just show this for this new calculations method will be so challenging. Today is the official recycling rate for plastic about 40%, but because of yield and quality losses in recycling processes, maybe just about 13%, which are actually recovered in new products. And as I was going back here, you could see this is 55% actually. So if we are in 30% today and we will go to 55% in the future, in just 4 years, that's a huge challenge. But so we need to work together to be able to fulfilling these requirements. And I also, as Malin said, there are a lot of proposal of new legislation. There is a proposal of some kind of product and weight volume radius. There are also a proposal of financial initiatives to thank you, to if you're using a recycled material, for example, that could be cheaper than using virgin material or some things, suggestions like that. But this is just proposals. But what I find interesting in the new report coming just last months was there are thoughts of actually changing waste hierarchy. So recyclability could be more important than prevention, and that would be interesting to see what that will come on to. So Miljöpack in the future, what we want to, we will have this as a platform for actors in the packaging value chain in collaboration with the Swedish Environmental Protection Area. And it's good now when we are at RISE. RISE is the neutral part, 100% owned by the government. And Miljöpack is based on a division in RISE called Bioeconomy, and where we work with sustainability and bio-based materials. We work with all kinds of materials, and we have all this, and we have a well-known name in the industry. So we think we will come back with this future. And we want to support the companies regarding the packaging requirements, EU legislation for packaging. And we give services that make it easier for companies to meet the requirements by knowledge, network, and information. So don't remember, we have an enforced legislation, and we have more demands from the authorities and also from customers. And you as a producer has to take care of this extended producer responsibility. And I hope Miljöpack could help you with that. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ann. That's great. I will start my video here so you see I'm alive. Thank you very much, both Ann and Malin. We are now open for questions. If there are any questions, I mean, I would just like to emphasize that this is a solid work that you have been doing during Miljöpack, and I think it's very interesting to see that we've over the years. The reason why Malin is here is because over the years we've had a great collaboration, a great discussion with such as the Swedish EPA, which is absolutely necessary for us, right, Ann? I mean, both EU and Sweden's regulations and politics and agencies are very essential to be able to support companies when they have to meet the requirements, because I think they are quite fierce, quite difficult to live up to. Okay, so do we have any questions? I'm looking at the chat here and I cannot see that we have any questions. In that case, as a moderator, I take the liberty, Malin, to ask you a question. So what do you think are the main hurdles to be able to actually enforce these new regulations in 2021? Do you think it's just a walk in the park, or is this something that we need to that you need to stress before?
No, as both Anna and I was going into our presentation, it's the regulation is getting harder to fulfill, and especially the higher demands on material recycling and all the work EU is putting in on the essential requirements. I think this is just a start. It's going to be more focused on the packaging, reduce responsibility. So I think we better shape up.
Aha, companies better shape up. Okay, we actually have one question here from Stefan from Kullaplast. How will the double producer situation be handled? Would these packages be reported twice?
No, we don't want this to be reported twice. So we're trying to look into guidance now. And as I said, we will have more guidance on our webpage, hopefully in the fall when this new web page for registration and reporting is done. So guidance is coming.
Okay, that's great. Another question here is, what is the biggest demand on achieving the EU goals?
I think it's both designing for material recycling, but also to find that the material that is recycled, that it's someone wants to use it, that it has some kind of market for the recycled material, so that the loop is closed. Because now we can see that we use virgin material, and if we start using more recycled material, maybe we can close the loop, and it's easier to reach the goals as well.
Okay, do you have any comments on that, Ann?
Yes, actually we are doing two different research projects is going on here at RISE now, dealing with how could RISE help the industry, what the need of the industry to actually get the better flow of the material. And I agree with Malin. Consumer behavior is an important part. The design is an important part, and also we need technical development of recyclability technology, and also about actually when we come with the recycled material, it has to have a market for it. And in that case, we need to have enough good quality, and we also need to have enough good assurance there is the quantity you need. So it's not easy to get this circle around, because if not all actors are doing this part, they are part of the circle. It's not a circle. You need a whole circle to have the flow. And,
so actually, it's as I understand, it's a lot of different things that you as a company have to keep track on. A lot of regulations, a lot of different things that you have to keep track of. Isn't that true?
Yes, but you need to figure out what your part of it. How could you help all the other actors? And design part is, of course, a real important part. Design of the packaging. And we haven't worked with that. We have worked very much in EU with the collecting and the recycling part. But we haven't really get into. And it's also interesting if we, of course, we're aiming for the circle flow. But as a researcher, I could also figure out, is that really what we need for the society? Or, for example, if you're going from prevention to get rid of energy recovery as a recovery method, that's a proposal now. You get rid of all the plastic laminates. Today we can't recycle that. And is that good for the environment? Because the plastic laminates prolong the lifetime for products.
Actually, I think it's good that you bring this up, because this is, of course, one of the issues that we are working with very much at this research institute from different angles, and I'd just like to go ahead of things. I know Helena thinks I'm going ahead of things, but the next breakfast seminar is actually going to address a technical part of this, which is dealing with barriers, because to be able to bring forward bio barriers is, as Helena just put up here, the holy grail for a sustainable packaging. And I think this is something that we see from the customers that we talk to very often. So please, if you're interested in this, come back on September 24th and listen to the breakfast seminar at that point. Okay, but with that, let's see if we have any other questions. Yeah, Staffan here is active and wants to know, where do I find the definition of a package? That's an interesting question. Is a plastic bag sack a package?
You can find the definition of a package in the Swedish ordinance or the EU directive. It depends on. But if you want to know what a package is in Swedish, you should know. You should look in the Swedish legislation, and we also have it on our webpage. And the plastic bag sack, if it's used for, if you put something in it and sell it with the product, then it's a package. But if you sell it as a plastic bag, just as a plastic bag that you can take home and use for your picnic or anything else, then it's not a package.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, thank you both so much for your presentations and your prompt answers. I have another question here that Helena and I have been trying to answer. The question is, will we get the presentations? And as Helena put out here, as the answer is the seminar is being recorded, and you can go to our webpage to have a look at it. But if you do want the slides, you can send a mail to Helena at helena.hallinen@ri.se. Okay. So with that, we'd like to finish up with a small a questionnaire. If you bring out your smartphones and put in the code 249669, and please, we appreciate very much if you answer our questions in order for us to see what you thought about this seminar and what we can probably do better. So Helena, can you put up the first slide? So the first question is, what did you think about the presentation from Malin, and what did you think about the presentation from Was it valuable? And then the last question, the overall impression of the seminar. Let's see, I have 0 answers so far. I wonder if everybody can go into menti.com. Yeah, there you go. Great. While you are voting, I'd like to, we still have about 32 people in the room, so it would be very good. I suppose you won't vote for your, yeah, so about 30, I think, something like that. While you're doing this, I'd like to just say that what I forgot to mention in the beginning is that this seminar is organized by me and Helena Halonen, who's doing a great job in this. Let's see if we can get some more answers. You are clicking to the next one. We'd also like to know, how did you get the information from our... See, I think, can you only vote on the slide that's up there? I'm not sure. I think you may, that might be the... So we have about 14 now, 15. Okay, so let's go to the next then. How did you get the information about the breakfast seminar? And we have 14 people answered this. Shall we say that that's okay? 15. All right, and then some feedback and ideas for the future topics. If you have any ideas on what you'd like to hear from us, our concept is that we during these seminars have 2 presentations, one from RISE and one from somebody that we are collaborating with in some way. So that's the concept we have, and we are very open to new topics. I'm glad to hear that the English level was good. Makes it easier to listen. That's nice. All right. There's someone that has a feedback of a dot. It's easily done. Okay. By that, the time is actually ready for next activities. It's 10 o'clock, and I don't see that we get any more input from this. If you think of anything after the seminar, feel free to contact either me or Helena, and we will send you some information. So thank you again, Ann and Malin. Thank you, Helena. And for all of you who came in and listened from not just Sweden, but also other parts of our world, which I really enjoy. This is something we appreciate very much. So until September, thank you very much from us.